Everything just changed for the New York Rangers as they've made a plethora of moves over the last 2 or 3 days. We have some draft picks to get into, of course, that the team made last week that we can further, elaborate on. And of course, Chris Drury spoke out today on some of the moves that he's made. He actually had a conference call, so we're going to get into some of his quotes and of course, the moves that he's made. But Bret, how you doing today? It's a pretty good day, I think, to be a Rangers fan, and I think Rangers fans are actually feeling very nice today because it's been a tidy off season so far.
Yeah, happy to be back, Darius. Welcome everyone who's in the chat. We got a lot to discuss today. We're going to be doing this every Wednesday, and it's just fun this particular Wednesday because we have so much to talk about here, whether it's, trades or free agency, draft, what's next, that type of stuff. We got so much to unpack here, and it is a good day to be a Rangers fan, Darius, because, the plan was up in the air. We didn't exactly know what the plan was because Chris Drury had an unconventional plan where he was taking care of not his own players first but waiting on negotiations from other teams to kind of come to a head and unfold. But everything came together once the big domino fell, and everybody in the chat knows who that big domino is. And I've come around on this player, guys, and circumstances have changed, so my mind has shifted a little bit, and I am excited about this player, Gavrikov. You guys all know who he is, and it's going to be a good year. I got a good feeling about this season, so ready to talk about it here today.
Absolutely, and let's waste no time. Let's get into it. And I do want to say that, it's okay. I'm of the mind that it's okay to change your mind when presented with new information, and the fact that Gavrikov signed for $7 million changed. I always wanted to do the move, but I thought it was going to be really bad. If it was $9 million, like, it would look bad, but it looks a lot better now. And I think gone is that narrative. I wanted to bring this up first, that, that narrative last season that, oh, Chris Drury is the boogeyman and no one wants to play in New York. Gavrikov clearly wanted to play in New York. A lot of people want to play in New York. They actually had a players poll, and New York was the second most voted city where players would want to go and want to play. So, and that's not the Islanders. So it was the New York Rangers. So clearly, and thank you, T. Appreciate that in the chat. But clearly, like, that narrative is done. But let's get into some of the moves. We can start with Will Cooley. We'll get into Gavrikov because there's a lot to unpack there. Cooley is a big one that we've been talking about for the last little while. They finally signed him to a 2-year, $3.9 million contract, a little bit less, or kind of in the middle of what we thought. We were saying like 3.5 to 4.5 kind of thing. And obviously, if there was an offer sheet, it would have been maybe $6 million, which would have been a disaster, but hey, we avoided that. It's all good. We don't have to talk about that anymore. But they re-signed Cooley. It's a bridge contract. They're going to have a ton of money to spend down the road as long as Chris Drury keeps things kind of tight and in order and doesn't, maybe he wants to go after Connor McDavid. I don't know. That's a next season thing. But they got Will Cooley signed in, and I think it's a good move. How do you feel about it, Bret? Oh, it's obviously a good move, but, like, I'm feeling pretty good.
I feel great about it, and you just brought up Connor McDavid, which is a dream I'll never give up on, of course, until pen is to paper. And we've already heard some big stars that are expected to re-sign with their teams that were expected to be free agents next year. Connor McDavid has not been mentioned as one of them, so we'll have more content on that down the road. But look, Will Cooley is a great player. He was a standout star for the Rangers in a season that was extremely disappointing. It was really tough to watch the team this season because it just seemed as if they did not care as much as the fans cared. And the fans put a lot of time and money and energy into this team, and hockey fans are passionate. That it's the most passionate sport, in my opinion, where in other sports the fans kind of come and go, for Super Bowl parties or whatever it may be. But Will Cooley being back is awesome. A homegrown talent where the Rangers have really struggled. Darius, you and I have spoken about this. They had a can't-miss prospect in Alexis Lafreniere, the #1 overall pick. That's as high as you can go to get the best player available. And, a good player, but the Rangers haven't been able to develop him into his full potential. I don't think it's necessarily his fault. I just think that they haven't utilized him the correct way, and we'll get more into that later on. But Will Cooley being here is just great because he wants to be a New York Ranger, and you just alluded to it. You said that there was this narrative that players don't want to be here. Whether it's the state income tax, whether it's the boogeyman, Chris Drury, whether it's the fact that the Rangers can't get over the hump, haven't been able to since '94, even though King Lundqvist was here, still wasn't able to get over the hump. But Will Cooley wants to be here. He made that clear because I truly believe he could have gotten more on the market. But you know what? He's betting on himself that he's going to continue to improve here over these next 2 years, and he will eventually cash in as the cap continues to rise. And This is an awesome player. He exemplifies everything a Ranger should look like. I've said that. I've been consistent with that here on the channel, that Will Cooley should have been off the table in any trade discussions. I mentioned Jason Robertson, where you'd have to at least consider, at least have the conversation about putting Will Cooley
Yep.
in there. But in terms of everybody else, I said he was untouchable. Quite frankly, the only untouchable in my mind. So great to have him back. He is a two-way player. He's got size, he's got speed, he's got grit. Happy to have him back, Darius.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I mean, I can echo it till I'm blue in the face. I have his jersey behind me. I mean, this guy is everything you want in a hockey player. He can score. He's only getting better every single season. 23 years old, right? A lot of people tend to forget that he's still very young, a young player in this league. So brings the physicality, all those, all that good stuff. So really, really happy with this move. I guess we can move on a little bit, and we'll get back into Will Cooley, I'm sure, and how, the lineup's going to look in a little bit. But I guess we can kind of get into Gavrikov, because he was the other, probably the biggest fish, I guess, this offseason for the New York Rangers, the biggest domino. This has been rumored for a long time, and I do want to give a shout out in the chat to Kadiza, first of all, for saying, we do work very hard to pump out this content for you guys, so really appreciate it when you guys are loving the content, and we try our best to kind of dissect everything that's going on with the Rangers. And Allison, who had a great question that, how elite can Fox and Gavrikov be together? Because we keep talking about how it would be a very good pairing, but of course, we were both kind of skeptical about the contract at first, but the fact that it's 7x7, I'm a little bit more open to it now. I would have done it either way, but it looks a lot better now, that's for sure. But Gavrikov is very underrated in terms of his stick checking. He's one of the best stick checkers in the league. He's going to take the puck off of you without even having to hit you, and if he does have to hit you, he's a big body that doesn't shy away from hitting. So he's going to be great in that way. Great defensive defenseman. You can see here from the JFresh chart. He can offer you some offense. He actually had a better offensive year than Keandre Miller last year, and this is the quote-unquote like only defensive defenseman kind of build, right? So really, really like that. Can play on the penalty kill, very effective on the penalty kill as well. But him with Fox, I keep saying it, and I'll throw it over to you now, Bret. It's kind of like that yin and yang. You have a great defensive defenseman with him now, and I loved Ryan Lindgren. I thought he was great. But this, to me, is the best defensive partner that Adam Fox might ever have in his entire career.
Best since Ryan McDonough, and Lindgren was certainly a great mate to have there. But when I look at Gavrikov, it's a bigger Lindgren. It's a more physical Lindgren in a different way. Lindgren throws his body all over the place. But when I look at Gavrikov, this is a very big guy. He's not an enforcer, but he is certainly a defensive stopper. He's going to be able to take some of that load off of Adam Fox. And I think we're going to see the best out of Adam Fox this season, because you just said it, Darius. This could be, I believe, his best partner since Ryan McDonough. And before I continue on here, Kadiza, thank you for those kind words. By the way, we do love putting out that content for you guys. And Allison, thanks for the question. You've been consistent here on the live streams. It's a great question. And Gavrikov is going to be great. I really came around to the move. I was not high on him because, as we saw in a player like Ivan Provorov, this class, they were considered big fish in a small market. And Provorov certainly set the market high. But, Gavrikov really wanted to come here. And it was clear because he's a better player than Provorov. Could have gotten more money, in my opinion. We've seen insiders like Pierre LeBrun who believes he actually had higher offers out there on the table. Yep. But we know that Gavrikov is friends with Igor Shesterkin. We know that he's wanted to play with Adam Fox, as Emily Kaplan has made that clear from ESPN, who does a great job. She said that for weeks now. It's been known that Gavrikov wants to play on that first line with Adam Fox, because they truly believe as well, I'm sure, that they will be a great yin and yang, a great complement with one another. Not only will they be great at 5-on-5 even strength, but on special teams as well, because, Adam Fox on the power play and Gavrikov on the penalty kill. I mean, I believe the Rangers can go back to being a top special teams team in the NHL. And when the Rangers are at their best, they are leading the way when it comes to special teams. So this is a very nice move for the Rangers. They got great value. $7 million for 7 years is not cheap. Let's not get it twisted. But they got great value for what the market dictated, for sure.
Absolutely. He was rumored, like you brought it up, he was rumored to get $9 million. There was other offers apparently on the table for $9 million. He chose to come to New York, which first of all makes you feel pretty good if you're a Rangers fan, right? He wants to play here. He knows Shesterkin, like you said, and I think that he wanted to play alongside Adam Fox. And I think obviously the yin and yang thing is a big factor here, but the other thing, and you brought it up, is the special teams. You have Gavrikov, who's going to be playing on the penalty kill, which is big. You have to fill that role, of course. But Adam Fox on the power play, I feel like a lot of the weight is probably off of his shoulders now, at least defensively this season, which is a good thing because he's been playing with Keandre Miller, or it was a revolving door last year, right? You never know who your defensive partner is, and you're having to lock in a little bit more defensively, which is not necessarily Adam Fox's game at times, right? So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they play together. And I did want to bring this up as well, and we'll touch on Gavrikov, but one player that is now pictured here that is going to be, I think, on the NHL team, I would imagine, because of the cap hit that he's making, is a new signee as well, and that's Taylor Radish. He played the entire season last year with the Washington Capitals, the best team in the league. I wanted to bring him up because he was an underrated signing by Chris Drury just yesterday. It was officially announced today, but last night they said they were getting it done. This is probably a third-line winger. I mean, he chipped in for a couple points with the Washington Capitals last year. Brad, I wanted your thoughts on this too. I mean, this isn't anything I'm going to lose my mind about, of course. It's a third line, winger, something like that. Maybe even fourth line at times. It depends if there's injury, stuff like that. We also don't know where Brennan Othman fits in all of this too. So, but I think this is a strong signing for the third line. It makes the team deeper. And I actually think, with not necessarily with this signing alone, but with all of these moves, the Rangers have potential to be an electric team again next year.
Oh, absolutely. And, like you just said, I mean, Radish is not going to make you go wild, run out in the streets and honk the horns or anything like that, or shoot off some fireworks, some extra fireworks on the 4th of July. But Radish is a great move because, it's a cost-effective move. The Rangers want to get better at middle six to bottom six in terms of forwards. And not only did he chip in with the Capitals, he's coming off a better year than he had the year before, for sure. He made major improvements. But let's not forget, 2022, 2023 with the Blackhawks, he scored 20 goals. So this is a player that has proven he can score 20 goals. Not a consistent 20-goal scorer, but he can do it. He's capable of doing it, and he's not too far removed from doing it. So I do like the move. I see Chris Drury's vision. They don't have much cap space, so it's not like they were able to go out and make this like flashy, sexy move. But Radish, he's got playoff experience. He's been on some of those Tampa Bay teams that went all the way. So I really like the move. Like I said, I'm not going nuts about it, but certainly a good move. And he's going to chip in. He's going to chip in for sure. And he's got size as well. Cost effective. He's got size, 6'3", over 200 pounds. So it's a good move. I'm a fan of it.
Yeah, I think it's a good move. Just a solid move. You're adding another guy, more depth to the lineup, a guy who's played in the NHL, had a really good year last year for his standards, of course. I'm not saying he's a 100-point getter or anything like that, but had a pretty good year. And I think this is interesting now because Parsonen's not even in this lineup. And you have a lot of cap space wrapped up in him. But I think this is creating healthy competition through camp, where if you're seeing that a couple guys are not performing, then you can move off of them. You free up some more cap space. I think it could be an interesting time around there. And of course, we know that you can be 10% over the cap heading into the season, or through the offseason, I should say, which is pretty interesting. So, a couple other things I want to touch on here from the chat, and then we'll get into some quotes from Chris Drury because he actually spoke to the media today, which I was expecting yesterday, but I guess he wasn't done with his move, so did speak to the media today and had some interesting tidbits, so stay tuned for that. But did want to get into Boxing Fan and what he was saying. Boxing Fan 5555. I want the Rangers to get Dmitry Voronkov, and obviously he is with the Columbus Blue Jackets. You touched on him in a video, Bret, just last week before the draft and free agency open. That's who they need, is what Boxing Fan says. Could slot in there in third line center. Could be an interesting option, but as we see right now, third line center is Zibanejad. I don't even know if Gabe Perreault is going to make this team. I wouldn't say it's a disaster if he doesn't make this team. Like, if he goes to the AHL, that's fine. Like, he's playing pro hockey and he's going to continue to develop, and that's totally fine. But you would like to see him make this team. Bit of a logjam. I wonder if something's got to give with Zibanejad and Voronkov. I mean, he's a good option. We covered him in a video last week. I feel like he could be a pretty good option, but they're tight for cap space, that's for sure.
Yeah, they certainly are tight for cap space, but I agree with Boxing Fan 555. I touched on it in a video about Dmitry Voronkov, and just looking at this Puckpedia chart here, Darius, there's some talent there for sure. There's a lot of guys that expect to bounce back on this team, but you just brought up Gabe Perreault and Mika Zibanejad, who's still slated in at third line center, and I look at that right wing position, and it's weak. If we're going to be honest about it, it's weak. I'd like to see Mika move to right wing. We've seen him produce there as of late. We've seen him done it in the past as well. And Voronkov would be awesome on that third line, in my opinion. And, we don't have a ton of cap space right now, but he's not exactly going to eat into your cap space like a $7-8 million type player, even a $6 million type player. You will be able to get him, especially if you move off a Carson Soucy, who we've seen Chris Drury reluctant to do as of right now. But there are moves. There is some finagling that the Rangers could do, and I think they really should look into trading Carson Soucy. I would like to open up that cap space to put towards a player like a Voronkov, somebody like that, because the Rangers do need to improve. They really do, especially on that third line. So I would love to see Chris Drury work the phones a little bit more here and try to open up some more cap space. It doesn't look like Mika is going to move with his $8.5 million, which would have cleared up a lot of cap space, but it's not like Chris Drury has his hands tied behind his back. There are some things he could do to open up some cap space. And I do agree with Boxing Fan. Voronkov would be a very nice fit on this Rangers team, a great third line center. So I'd love to see that.
And based on what you just said, I will throw it over to Khadiza in the chat, because she basically, put exactly what I was thinking, which is you move Carson Soucy with the $3.25 million, you can go out and get a Voronkov at that point, right? So if you really wanted to make that happen, you could make that happen if you wanted to. But I think Chris Drury is being a little bit stubborn with Carson Soucy right now. He wants to hold on to him, see if he can sell high on him. I don't know how much higher his value is getting at this point. It was not a good end of the season, and not a great end of the season for anyone on the Rangers necessarily. But I do want to point out too that the updated defense pairings have been released, and Puckpedia does not have them yet, and it's actually Schneider on pairing 2 with Borgen on the left side. So they're absolutely going to try that, unless it's a disaster. That sounds like what they're going with. I like that. Scott Morrow should slot into the lineup, which I think is very exciting if you're a Rangers fan, because he's an awesome player, great offensive defenseman in the Carolina Hurricanes system, and actually got into, and you brought this up in our video where we broke it down, Bret, he actually played in the Eastern Conference Final. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. I feel like he's about to make the jump to the NHL as a full-timer, so I feel like that is awesome as well. But a couple other things from the chat. Perreault being an AHLer. How do you feel about Perreault? Because he came into the NHL. He obviously played a few games at the end of last season. We can touch on him a little bit. I honestly believe, Bret, that he is going to start the year in the AHL.
Yeah, I think he has to start the year in the AHL. I don't dislike him the way I, have disdain for Carson Soucy, but just looking at this, let's look at this right wing position here for a second, Darius. I mean, Alexis Lafreniere as one right wing, I mean, it's not exactly going to cut it. I mean, you can't truly contend with Gabe Perreault as your second winger. I just don't see it. The production just isn't there. I'm not saying he doesn't have the will or the want to. He doesn't want to be a Ranger. I'm not saying that. I like the way he works, and I do think he can improve. I just like to see him get some more ice time in the AHL. I don't want to see him getting a ton of ice time with the Rangers, at least at the moment, so I'm not looking to cut him or do anything like that. There's not really a point in trading him. I mean, not going to get much. I mean, he's a cost-effective player, so it's not like you're breaking the bank on him. But I do see some potential there. I just I don't want to see him start the season, if I'm being honest with you, on the right wing roster.
Yeah, I just don't know if it's time yet. Like I don't throw him into the fire if you don't have to. And you have guys like Brennan Othmann available to you right now. And we're going to get to Shabunov in a second. I'm a big fan of Shabunov, and I see a lot of you guys talking about it. We're going to get to it in a second. And we're going to have a video on it. I'm going to pop up some stats on screen actually here in a second. But sorry, these are all the signings here, but we'll get to the signings in a second. But yes, I don't know if it's time yet. I think Gabe Perreault needs some time to marinate in the AHL, put on some muscle, get some experience at the the pro level, like a Brennan Othmann did, like some of these other guys did, and then you make the jump to the NHL. And he looked fine. But if you're not producing regularly and you're just kind of, you're sinking more than you're swimming, go to the AHL, get your confidence up at the pro level, and then come up to the NHL. There's no reason to rush him besides the fact that he's on his ELC already, right? So that would be the only thing. But you already burned a year, so what's burning a couple more months at this point, right? It doesn't really matter. I do want to bring up now Shabunov. I'm going to pop some stats here, Bret, on screen here. This is Maxim Shabunov. This is going to be kind of weird, but I'm going to try and fit this in here best I can. But everybody should be able to see this now. This is Maxim Shabunov. plays in the KHL for Tractor Chelyabinsk, I believe the team name is. He had 67 points in 65 games this past year. He's been progressing every year. He's getting better. He's only 24 years old. He is the hottest free agent out of the KHL, I believe, right now that will be making the jump to the NHL. So, covered him in a video, I believe at the end of last season. There was rumors that he wanted to come to New York, whether it was the Islanders or the Rangers. Didn't work out last season. He spent another year in the KHL. I like these numbers, Brett. These numbers are, really good to me. It's hard to score in the KHL. You'll never see like NHL numbers. You'll never see like Panarin 120 points really in the KHL. So to be a point of game player in the KHL, this guy's a really good talent. He's a little bit smaller, so keep that in mind. He's 5'8", only 100 and I think that says 56 pounds, which is insane. I don't know if that's true, but so he's a little bit smaller, but he is still pretty young. I think he's ready to make an impact, and this guy could be absolutely electric in the NHL. So do you see a spot for this guy in the NHL? Like, I would imagine it's an ELC, right? Like, he'd be making close to minimum, maybe $1 million, something like that. So I think it's a low risk play if they make a move, but do they have a spot for this guy on the team?
Oh, I think they do. I think they need to make a spot for this guy. I mean, I am really high on Maxime Shabanoff, and I'm glad you brought up Panarin there ever so slightly, because I was scrolling X, before the live stream, and I see a lot of Rangers fans out there, comparing him to Artemi Panarin, Panarin 2.0, but Panarin's a much bigger player. I get it. He played in the KHL. He's Russian. He's got a similar play style at left wing, but let's not get it twisted here. Artemi Panarin. He plays small, but he is a bigger guy. He's 6 foot and he's more than 156 pounds, which, like you said, that's hard to believe that he's only 156 pounds. But this is a gadget type player. This is an electric, prolific scorer. You just said the stat right there, Darius. 67 points in 65 games in the KHL. I mean, this is just above a point per game player. That's extremely impressive. Let's not forget, some superstars have come out of the KHL. You've got Vasilevsky, you've got Panarin, Kuznetsov. You got guys like this. I mean, these are studs. So you're looking at a gadget type player, and the Rangers are not short of size. I mean, they have a ton of big players on this roster. I mean, the guy Radish they just brought in is big. Cooley they're bringing back as a giant. You look at that fourth line. I mean, it's like an NBA roster at fourth line. So I think if you sprinkle in a gadget player like I can't say his name, Shabanoff.
Yep.
If you throw in a gadget player like this, I think this is a kind of player that the Rangers need when there's kind of a lull in the action, when things are kind of, slow and stagnant. If you put a guy like this on the ice, give you a quick burst, I really would like this player on the Rangers. They just got to utilize him correctly. I'm not saying play him 20 minutes a night, but use him situationally. And kind of like the Rangers did with Rempe early on his career, when they would use him situationally, but now he's kind of found his way on that fourth line. But definitely a gadget player. I'd love to see him on the Rangers.
That could be an interesting idea, like bringing him in. Because, again, it's not going to cost you. I would imagine he's not going to make big money immediately. He could. I could be very wrong, but I would imagine he's not going to make, a significant amount of money right away. So it could make a lot of sense, plugging him in somewhere here on the lineup. Maybe even the top six. I mean, if you're scoring like that, you can play in the top six, right? But I do wonder, the KHL is a different game than North America, right? Like, the physicality is a lot more in North America. If he truly is, I don't know how real that is, but if he truly is 156 pounds and 5'8", that it will be tough. But he's fast. Like, some of the highlights, he's quick. He's got the hands. He's a smart hockey player, you can tell, and he can put the puck in the back of the net. So it would be an interesting idea, I think, to fit him in. You can move some pieces if you really wanted to, and like you brought up, you have, I think the only thing that's solidified on this team right now, besides the goaltending, is probably the fourth line. You're also like the defense looks pretty good. I feel like they could still make a move in terms of like shipping Carson Soucy. I don't want this to turn into the Carson Soucy hate channel. I don't, but like I'm just saying, like, you could use that cap space, because I just don't know how much that guy is going to play next season. But it's probably the fourth line right now. So there's still a lot they can do in terms of like, where does Zibanejad fit in? Because I feel like he doesn't really right now. Like, where is he fitting in? Is he that second line right wing? It's a weird one. One thing I wanted to get into in terms of the defense, because Chris Drury actually spoke out today, so I did want to get into that. he had some interesting quotes today in terms of the defense and why he signed Gavrikov and what he was seeing from the defense. And basically what he said on the conference call is it starts in our D-zone coverage, certainly defending in the high danger areas, which we were simply put not good at last year. And surprise, surprise, I was saying on the channel that Peter Laviolette was saying, we don't have any structural issues. There's nothing wrong with the defense. We know exactly what we're doing. And here's Chris Drury, the GM, saying we were awful. So pretty interesting there. Pretty big disconnect. But we have to be better in our own zone. We have to be better in front of Shesterkin and Quick, of course. And to me, that's the mindset he shows up with every single day. The size, the reach, and he's talking about Gavrikov here to be specific. The size, the reach, the competitiveness, the way he defends, the way he's able to complement his partner, which is a big thing we were talking about in Adam Fox. And if that's Fox or any other of our right shot D, that's what we have. That's what we're excited for. So pretty excited myself about that. And I'm glad that he at least acknowledged that. So Brett, I wanted your thoughts on that too, because Chris Drury has at least officially acknowledged that there was a disconnect there and that they needed help on defense. And I think Gavrikov is going to be able to help with that. And what do you think? I want to throw this out too. What do you think about Braden Schneider on the left side? Do you think that's going to work? Like a lot of people have again, I'm more of a traditional guy where I prefer the right shots on the right side, left shots on the left side, right? But there is potential for that to be really good.
Yeah, there is potential, and I said it a long time ago that I'd explore Schneider on the left side.
Yep.
I'd like to see him get more opportunity here, and it's kind of been stuck down on that third line, and it'll be nice to see him get even more ice time. Put him on that second line, see what he could do. You got to start early, though. You can't wait till the season starts, anything like that. This has got to start right now so he can adjust. And something else that I like about Braden Schneider, which is usually forgotten because he is a physical player, a very big player, very physical player, plays with the type of aggression that you love, but he's got offensive upside. This is a guy that has slowly improved season after season. He hasn't made any massive jumps like a JJ Peterka, who we spoke about here on the channel a long time. I mean, Peterka is a type of player that was making 18-point jumps from year to year. Defensemen don't typically do that, obviously, but I like what I'm seeing from Schneider each year, getting better and better and better. And I said that the Rangers had to be in the business of bringing in players and keeping players that have shown growth, that are young, that have shown growth, consistent growth, not up and down, like a Keandre Miller, who in some years looks fantastic, and in other years, like you always say, Darius, throwing pizza pies up the middle of the ice. So I'm definitely intrigued to see what Schneider could do. They got to start early. Like I said, I trust this coaching staff. I like Schneider. I've always wanted to see him get more of an opportunity. Not a perfect player. I don't love his giveaway to takeaway ratio. Think he could clean that up a bit, but you got to try it out at least, because at least that first defensive pair is locked in. You know who it's going to be.
Yep.
You know it's going to be elite. So, if the second pair is not, the best thing in the world, they'll be able to manage. But I do think it has potential to be very good. Borgen is physical. Schneider's physical. It gives you that offensive upside. And I love Drury's quote there, because the team goes as Igor goes. And you saw when the defense was awful and putrid the way it was. Igor, for as good as he is, as magical as he is, he didn't stand a chance. It's like a quarterback when his offensive line stinks. You saw, Patrick Mahomes get obliterated when his offensive line couldn't protect him. So Igor needs his defense to be strong and stout. And bringing in Gavrikov, I've really come around here, guys. After seeing the contract and other circumstances, it's a good move. Igor is going to be better. Fox is going to be better, which in tail is going to mean the Rangers will be better.
Absolutely. And we know, like you mentioned, I think the first pairing is solidified. Unless something disastrous happens, they're going to be playing together, Gavrikov and Fox. The second pairing, this is where I think it gets interesting. Just talk about this for a second. I do want to get to Allison's question in a second. But the second pairing, as far as we know right now, is Schneider on the left and Borgen on the right. Then your last pairing, from what I heard, is going to be Morrow, who's actually going to make the NHL. Again, anything can happen through camp. But Morrow on the right side, and then Vakanainen on the left. So are you telling me that you're going to have Carson Soucy and $3.2 million sitting in the press box every night? Free up that cap space, bring up somebody else who can play that. Matthew Robertson, I think, is ready for prime time if he's going to be a seventh defenseman. Just do that instead. Free up that money. You can use that elsewhere. In terms of using it elsewhere with some of the weaknesses, to address some of the weaknesses, which I think is the forward group to a certain degree. Like, I don't know. You have a solid first two lines, but like, who's actually the first line? You know what I mean? Like, I think it's the one that is pictured here with Panarin, but Miller is your second line center. Like, that doesn't really make sense to me. So I feel like there's a lot they got to figure out. Perreault is definitely just not yet a second line winger, right? So I think the weakness is not necessarily in any one position, but I think it's the fact that they do not have too much solidified beyond the first pairing of defense, the goaltending, and the fourth line. I think that's the weakness of the team, the fact that they don't necessarily have an identity throughout the rest of the team, which is going to be interesting to see how that plays out in training camp. But are there any other weaknesses, Bret, that you see with the team? Again, thank you for your question, Allison, but are there any weaknesses you see with this team right now? Because I don't think it's done, but I think there is a few.
Well, thank you for the question, Allison. And I would say that, before the Rangers signed Gavrikov, it was like if we were doing the stream last week and that question was asked, it'd be a toss-up for me between defense and right wing, to be honest with you. And at this particular moment, I'm not loving what I'm seeing from right wing. I said it earlier in the stream, and just to finalize my thoughts on Perreault, nothing against the guy, but there's nothing really that elite trait that I tend to talk about here on the channel. You don't have to have elite statistics. There's nothing elite about him. Whether it's the physicality, the size, his hands, his vision, his wrist shot. There's nothing elite in his game, in my opinion. Didn't score a point last season. He didn't play much, but not saying that he doesn't have potential. We haven't necessarily, 5 games isn't really, enough to, put the jury out on this guy, but they need to improve at right wing. The defense is looking good. It's not looking perfect. You made a great point about 125 or 3.25 million sitting in the press box every night. I mean, that would be a disaster. It'd be even worse than what Chris Drury did at the deadline, trading a third-round pick for this guy. You're telling me you're going to have over $3 million sitting in the press box when you clearly need to make improvements. We've been so focused on the defense, guys. We've got to start bringing in some more goal scorers. And like Voronkov, we spoke about him earlier. He could bring some scoring ability. Obviously, having Radish on this roster, he's shown he could chip in, but nothing substantial here. Nothing that really gets me excited. Shabanov could provide some help at forward, left wing, but we need help at right wing. Left wing, we're looking all right. We're looking solid at left wing. We need help at right wing. I said Lafreniere can't simply be your first right winger. You are not going to win many hockey games, or at least many hockey games that matter with this current construction. I love the fourth line, but lines 1, 2, and 3 kind of up in the air at right wing, Darius. So I'd like to see them do some more work there. And if not, bring in a center like Voronkov so you can move Mika to right wing. That would, clean things up a little bit, make it look a little more appealing. So, Drury's had a great day yesterday, a great 24 hours, whatever you want to call it, but I hope he's still in the office right now working the phones past 5 because Rangers still have work to do.
Yeah, there's still a lot of other pieces to either acquire or to trade away. Like, this team is not complete yet, and I have obviously Shabanov up on screen right now. But if you take a look at the lineup, the team isn't necessarily done yet, I don't think. And you bring up a good point about Voronkov. You bring him in, you solidify your third line center position. You can move Zibanejad up to a second line right wing where he was pretty good with Miller. If you are going to hang on to him and he doesn't want to leave, he can play with Miller. They did look good together, so that would lengthen the lineup a little bit. But then you have to move some players out, right? You would have to look at Parsonen being moved out. You just signed him to a new contract extension too, so you'd have to look at that. And I think things could get very interesting. I do want to get into all the signings real quick. So for those of you who missed everything that happened over the last 24, 48 hours at this point, I'm going to run through it very quickly, and then I do want to get into a question and your thoughts on it, Bret. But very quickly, Taylor Radish was signed to a 2-year contract at $1.5 million. Obviously, Derek Pouliot was also signed, who is a depth defenseman. I would not expect him to see time unless there is 4 or 5 injuries on the blue line at this point. Depth defenseman, he's going to be with the Hartford Wolfpack. Keandre Miller was traded to the Carolina Hurricanes in return for a first, a second, both next year's draft, and Scott Morrow, who is a great, young, promising offensive defenseman, right shot offensive defenseman, who's 6'2", by the way, 210 pounds, 22 years old. So great play there, great trade there. Will Cooley was signed to a contract extension, 2 years, a bridge contract at $3.9 million. And they also signed, this is one we missed actually, they signed Justin Dowling, and I believe he's going to be playing with the Hartford Wolfpack as well. $775,000, 2-year contract. And of course, Vladislav Gavrikov was the first domino for some reason. Should have been the last domino to fall, but was the first domino to fall. It's $7 million over 7 years, which is a lot better than we thought it was going to be. So that's just a roundup from the last couple of days. If you missed that, we'll get into some more Cooley and some Miller stuff, because obviously Chris Drury spoke out on that. But real quick, I did want to get into a question from Allison, if I can find it here. It did come up a little while ago, but or sorry, it was actually from Kadiza, excuse me. She asked, I have a question for you and Bret. Between Urho Vakanainen and Matthew Robertson, who would you have on the third pair? Which I love how we're all just ignoring Carson Soucy at this point. But but who would you have on the third pairing? Would you rather Matthew Robertson, the younger defenseman who looks pretty promising, and of course played, I think a game or two in the NHL at the end of last season. It might have been just the one game. Him or Vakanainen? Who would you have, Bret?
This is a tough one, because obviously we've seen more from Vakanainen, but I'm gonna go with Matthew Robertson here. I am gonna go with Matthew Robertson. I like what I saw from him when he was here for just a cup of coffee. As we've spoken about Darius with the Rangers, but he was a plus player on the ice. I like what I saw from the Wolfpack coming off his best year. I think this is a player that's ready to take a jump. This is a very big physical player. He's, if I'm not mistaken, just about like Carson Soucy's size, except
Yep.
you actually notice that he's on the ice. Like Carson Soucy. I'm not even gonna get into it. I don't want to make it the hate channel, like you said, on Carson Soucy, but you don't got to worry, because Chris Drury's his biggest fan, so you don't have to worry about that. But definitely Kadiza. I shouldn't say definitely. It took me a second there to think about. I like Vakanainen. I see a place for him on this team. Could be a seventh defenseman, could be on that third line. It could be interchangeable. It could be on a night-to-night type of basis, plug and play, whoever makes sense with the matchups. But I want to see Matthew Robertson get a longer leash right here. I really want to see that. There's no better time to play him than right now. The Rangers need to experience with that, just like they're experimenting with Schneider on the left side. I would love to see Robertson in the NHL for more than just a cup of coffee this season. Let him play. Let's see what he could do. He's physical. He's got the want to. He's got the will. You see him knocking players around out there. I want to see him on this roster.
So for me, it's interesting. I probably would have had a different answer a couple days ago, but now with the trade for Keandre Miller going out the door, and obviously Morrow coming in, Morrow, to me, out of the two, him and Robertson, Morrow is more NHL ready, but I don't think you can pair them together. So I'm going to actually go with Vakanainen because he has more NHL experience. I'd rather him there, but I will say that is in the immediate. That is short term. The long term plan, it is Matthew Robertson. He should be, an everyday NHLer at some point. So I think a long term, it's definitely Matthew Robertson, and I'm probably giving a longer winded answer than this needs at this point. But probably Matthew Robertson long term, but I would take Vakanainen to start, at least see how that goes. Play him with essentially a rookie. He has played, a lot in the NHL, but I think he might actually still be considered a rookie. I could be incorrect on that, but brand new to the league still, only 22. So I feel like having a guy who's, has one NHL game of experience and a guy who has like half a season or something like that together on your third pairing maybe wouldn't be the smartest move going into the season. Could be a lot of fun. We could see that, in certain games, of course, but like very situational depending who you're playing. If you're playing like the San Jose Sharks or something, run and gun game, something like that, have some fun with it. But I think probably Vakanainen for the time being, but could get very interesting. That's for sure.
Was the question from Kadiza, did I mistake it there? Was it Robertson or Vakanainen or Morrow or?
It was no. So I was just given my thoughts that if you had Robertson there, I think Morrow is playing the right side. So it was one or the other. It was Vakanainen or Matthew Robertson. But
Got it.
I was just expanding more. I'm like, this is my thought process of why I don't know if this would work, right? So
I love it.
But yeah, I think Jeffrey has a question as well. Gabe Perreault, Othman, and a second rounder and Soucy for Voronkov. I would do that. I don't know if it would cost that much to get Voronkov. But you know what? Maybe you do have to throw Othman in there because Soucy's in that. So maybe as the sweetener,
exactly.
maybe that would have to happen. That could be very interesting. But right. I think there's a lot that they could do still. Was it more surprising, and this is from Allison, Provorov, getting nearly $9 million, or Keandre Miller's contract at 7.5. Also, keep in mind, we haven't actually mentioned this on the channel yet. You might have in a video, actually, Bret. Keandre Miller now makes more than Vladislav Gavrikov on the Rangers. That is absurd. I think that is absolutely insane. So again, a great deal for Gavrikov in that regard as well. But which one's crazier, Provorov's contract or K'Andre Miller's contract?
Oh, Provorov or K'Andre Miller? I'm gonna have to go with K'Andre Miller. That's a great question from Alice. I'm gonna have to say K'Andre Miller is the more surprising one to me. Obviously, not surprising that he got moved, but
Right.
the assets that the Rangers were able to acquire, the type of contract that he was able to get, and Provorov, we all know he's not worth $8.5 million over 7 years. This is a player who I've said repeatedly why he scares me. One of the many reasons is that, coming off his worst hit per game year, just zero point 0.3 hits per game, which is unacceptable from, a defenseman making $8.5 million. I mean, it's really putrid. But K'Andre Miller, the contract that he got, absolutely insane. And the reason it's more surprising is simply because I said that this was the type of market where, it's a big fish in a small pond. And, Provorov and Gavrikov were two of those fish. And, Columbus, I don't know what they were smoking when they brought Provorov back. I mean, one of the things that might be underrated when it comes to Provorov is, I'm not 100% sure on this. If we could look this up real quick, was he an alternate captain with the Blue Jackets this past season? Because it's very important to the point that I'm about to make here. I just want to get some clarity on that before I go on. Alternate captain.
So breaking news actually here on stream, ladies and gentlemen. Maxim Shabanov is actually just signed with the New York Islanders. So the reports were actually true, and Chris T was actually the first one to let me know there in the chat, and then I checked it. Elliot Friedman has just reported that Shabanov is indeed going to New York, but it is the New York Islanders, and he will. He will fit their system very well. Small player, but that is very interesting. Lots of rivalry stuff going on next year. I'm very, very excited for honestly the preseason. I'm not gonna lie.
I know Patrick on Islanders Digest. I'm happy about this one.
Oh yeah.
Patrick is gonna be happy about this one. Enjoy this one, Patty. But but I'm really upset about this, Darius. I was just hyping this guy up, talking about how great the KHL was, But getting back to Provorov,
I do want to say before you get back to Provorov, worst case scenario, by the way, he signed while we're live on stream, and it's to the Islanders. That is the absolute worst case scenario. Just wanted to acknowledge that for a second, but continue, sir.
Absolutely. Spence, we just spoke. We were just speaking so highly of this guy that's going to go play for the Islanders. Actually, I'm actually not that impressed with the KHL. And
he's terrible. Take back everything we said. He's awful.
And so at his size, he's not going to make the NHL. But look, back to Provorov. He was actually an alternate captain with the Blue Jackets. So who knows? Maybe the Blue Jackets value him because obviously, the tragedy that happened with Johnny Gaudreau in Columbus, keeping that team together the way the Blue Jackets did, almost making the playoffs, if they didn't lose to the Rangers, they probably would have made the playoffs. But I think that's something that's under the radar, holding that team together, being competitive. But we all know he's not an $8.5 million player. But K'Andre Miller, I mean, he more than doubled his contract, what he was making with the Rangers, $3.82 million. And coming off the year that he did, I mean, this is a player that's been getting worse over the past 3 seasons. So what do the Carolina Hurricanes do? What do? They reward K'Andre Miller for coming off nearly one of his worst seasons in the NHL, and they give him the kitchen sink. They give him everything that he wanted and more. Definitely more surprised with the K'Andre Miller contract and the assets that we got in return, Darius, which are some really, really good assets.
My jaw, when I saw the return, so we knew that it was going to be a draft pick. When I saw it was a first, a second, and who the prospect was in Scott Morrow, and the fact that K'Andre Miller got the $7.5 million contract, I was floored. Absolutely floored. I was like, that is insane. Now, keep in mind the salary cap is going up a lot, so a lot of these contracts being signed are, including, I guess, inflation, if you want to call it that. The fact that The salary cap is rising so much over the next couple of years, so they're signing for the future. They don't want to sign what they're worth right now. They're saying, I'm actually worth this much because the cap is going up X amount. So that is a little bit crazy. And I have to say that Shabanov, I do want to say, for those of you tuning in here that didn't know Shabanov, yeah, he's an Islander. He signed. It's official. They just announced it. Awful timing. But a couple of things I want to get into before we wrap up here. Chris Drury did speak to the media today, and we're going to have a video on this actually right after. So stay tuned for that. We'll either have it up tonight or probably tomorrow morning. We'll see what goes on there. But was Chris Drury concerned about offer sheets? Because I'll tell you this, Bret, and the chat, I was. So was Chris Drury concerned about offer sheets for Cooley and or Miller? He went on to say, it's within the rules. It's certainly not something that you can ignore. But at the end of the day, we were just happy to be able to facilitate a trade with Carolina for the other pieces we got back, which we thought was a good return, and also be able to use Keandre's money somewhere else. So not too much there. And then, of course, the salary cap, where they're at in terms of that. But he also spoke out on, trying a couple times, or some of the media, like Vince Mercogliano, tried a couple of times to ask if the New York Rangers are viewing Mika Zibanejad as a center or a wing, because, us, both personally, been talking on the channel for a while about it. We have no clarity on that. I'm very confused about it, and I would like some insight into it. But Drury wasn't biting. He said, we're in constant communication about a lot of different things within the organization. Just an absolute word soup, like just nothing there. But I think one of the best parts about the forward group is there's a lot of versatility. There's a lot of players that can play center and wing. I'm trying to give the coaches as many options as possible. I don't know if being able to play center and wing is that good of a thing if you can't win faceoffs or actually play the center position effectively. So, which, Mika's kind of tailing off a little bit there. So what do you make of that? Not much there, but we need some insight, because I have no idea what to make of this lineup with Zibanejad making 8.5 as a third line center. That is ludicrous.
Yeah, there's talent, but there's a lot of mishmash, like you just said. And Chris Drury, word soup, talking right there, and also talking about Will Cooley with the offer sheet, sounding like a real politician, because he was absolutely concerned just as much as we were with the offer sheets, because it seemed like he was locked on Vladislav Gavrikov for a long time, and you and I have said when he locks in on a player, he wants that player. He goes to whatever it takes to make it happen. And with Will Cooley, he was 100% concerned, because we didn't know the contract that Gavrikov was going to get. When we saw Provorov get paid, we said, oh boy, Pierre LeBrun said, here we go, going to get $9 million. And that would totally screw everything up for Chris Drury, because, he didn't sign Will Cooley till after bringing in Gavrikov. So if Gavrikov would have indeed made $9 million, where would that have left the Rangers? And if the Rangers would have had to have let Will Cooley go to an offer sheet to a team that was going to offer him more than the $3.9 million that the Rangers were able to bring him back on, because he didn't want to trade Carson Soucy, we would have had to riot, because, if Gavrikov thank God he only got $7 million, because if he would have got more than Provorov, the Rangers would have been in a very, very sticky situation, because, there would have not been much money to play with and go around when it comes to Will Cooley. So you don't want to get into a bidding war there, and I'm glad that they did not. So that first domino that fell, it worked out in the Rangers' favor. It could have went the other way, Darius. Thank God it didn't, and the Rangers were able to bring back Will Cooley shortly after, signing Gavrikov and trading Miller. But he was absolutely concerned. Let's not get it twisted. That was a very politician-like answer, and the team, there's no clarity. We don't know if Mika's playing wing, center, and you made an amazing point when you said, what's the value of playing center if you can't really play it? You got to win faceoffs. You got to win critical faceoffs. It's not just about size, speed, and snarl. It's about being opportunistic. It's about winning those key faceoffs. And if the Rangers don't have that guy, then it's going to be, think about the Hurricanes and Jordan Stahl. Why is he still there? He does those type of things. He's like 100 years old, a dinosaur, but he still does the little things that winning teams do. And that's why Carolina, they haven't won a cup, but as of late, but they are consistently making deep runs because they got guys, specialty guys like that. And the Rangers simply don't at the moment. Mika's tailing off, as you said, and having these guys, I want guys to play their traditional position. That's what I want. Like Lafreniere going from a left winger to a right winger. Like, why do we have to do that? Why do we think he was, Mark Messier, Sidney Crosby, that this guy could just, step on the ice and be a game changer? It doesn't always work out that way. So I like the versatility, but let's bring in guys that actually specialize at a particular position, not just play all over the map.
Absolutely. And I think that, I like your point about specialty players like Jordan Staal, exactly, in Carolina. They're always in the mix, right? And he scores not that many goals over the course of a year. They have their scoring in the top of their lineup, but he's really good at what he's good at. And that's, winning faceoffs. He can clamp down defensively when you need him to. So I'm not saying to go out and get him or anything like that, but I feel like the Rangers might have too many of the same player, and the same player that aren't as good, and B, just a bunch of guys who can play every single position, but you don't know exactly where they fit in or what the kind of identity of each line is, except for the fourth line. And I do want to say, John, I didn't make this lineup. This is from Puckpedia. So if you go on Puckpedia, this is the lineup that they have there. This is not really based on anything because they're just signing guys. And we know that defense core doesn't, won't really look like this in game one, but I'm just bringing it up to kind of have an idea of who's, on the NHL squad. But, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, but I think we will wrap it up there. Any final thoughts, Bret, on everything that's happened the last couple of days? We're going to have another video shortly on everything that Chris Drury went through because there is a lot of fallout from obviously the trades and some of the free agency signings. But thank you everyone for tuning in. But any final thoughts, Bret? Because I thought it was a very successful day one of free agency, even successful day two if you want to count the Taylor Radish signing as today, because I think that was a pretty good depth signing, that's for sure. And I also don't think he's done. I feel like he's going to move some money out and he's going to try and move some things around. And I have to be honest, if it was up to Chris Drury, I mean, I don't think there was a world where Mika Zibanejad's still on this team next year, but obviously that is up to Mika Zibanejad.
Right, you can't always have it your way, and it looks like Mika wants to stay, and it is what it is. It's your tree and you're sitting in it. That's the contract that he was given, and it's unfortunate, but until he waives that no trade clause, you got to deal with it. But when it comes to clearing out more cap space, Carson Soucy, he's been reluctant to trade, but let's not get it mistaken here. He's not an untouchable. It's not like Chris Drury won't look to trade him if they have to, because they're running out of cap space here. They're getting short on pocket change to play with. So if he has to move a Carson Soucy, he will. And, the Rangers have some options at defense. So, but my final thoughts are definitely going to want to tune in because we got more content coming your way. Going to have a video out shortly, or either shortly or in the morning or both, who knows. And also follow us on X. Our X account just got started here recently at Rangers Digest YouTube. And I like to always say the YouTube is abbreviated, so it's YT. It's at Rangers Digest YT. We're going to have updates over there. We're going to be tweeting, going to get engaged with you guys, and definitely check that out. Got more social media coming your way with which Darius could elaborate a bit more on here. But yeah, definitely a fun stream. Thank you guys for tuning in, and keep coming because we seem to do this every Wednesday and we have a blast doing it.
Yeah, we're going to do it every Wednesday until the season starts, seemingly. Of course, if we can make the scheduling work, but that's the plan right now. We appreciate everyone for tuning in, all the regulars. Obviously, Allison, Khadiza, KD, noticed you in the chat as well. You've been here since the beginning, so appreciate that. So, it's going to be a lot of fun as the summer goes on. Talk about, different things that are happening. I'm sure there's more moves up Chris Drury's sleeve, that's for sure. And I'm sure he's going to talk to the media again shortly. So we'll obviously cover that. We'll have videos like Bret talked about, and we're going to be on all socials soon. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be very exciting. We'll give you all the details when that kind of comes out. But thank you everyone for tuning in. Check out the video that we posted a couple of them today. There's so many moves going on, so check out those ones. And in the meantime, before obviously we upload either a video coming out tonight or tomorrow, but there's content every single day on the channel. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next one.